By the end of this video, you're going to be familiar with the story behind the numbers of Globus Maritime Limited, a shipping company, big boats. I didn't realize that most shipping companies, the big ones, are all from Greece actually. I have no idea if I'm going to run into something completely foreign to me, but I guess that's the fun of today's video. Let's dive in so that our wisdom can blossom. The income statement, basically all voyage revenues. This revenue has grown by over 5 times since the pandemic. This 2020 year should be taken with a grain of salt. Most of us noticed that shipping and international trade was heavily affected by the lockdowns in 2020. What looks like impressive revenue growth might be more of a recovery story rather than any type of growth. This is what the earnings per share looked like. It's at $1.18 right now. 2 years ago, that grain of salt year, it was at negative $18 a share. So very much, I don't think that is a normal year for this company. I don't think management wants that to be considered part of their normal history. Statement of cash flows. Depreciation increasing steadily. This is good for this sort of business. The big change is that they've actually had a pivot towards investing millions of dollars into inventories. In conclusion of the opening move, about a tenth of all their cash last year went into this inventories, which according to the balance sheet is a brand new thing. Let's take a look into what they're thinking with this. What is an inventory for them? Okay, we have found in the notes to the financial statements a definition of inventories. They consist of lubricants, bunkers, and gas cylinders. All right. Is this thing that they're going to sell? Usually, inventories is something that a company is going to sell, something that can lead to future sales or future revenue. We're going to have to go to the item 7 to see if management has more detail about why they're classifying lubricants and all this other stuff as an inventory. Zero mention of that in the item 7. It is very much not explained anywhere why this is inventories, but it is clear that this is the very first time that they're going out of their way to track how much lubricants, bunkers, and gas cylinders there, and then including that as a new row on the balance sheet. This is more than tripled, almost quadrupled in just the last year. What this does to the balance sheet is increase the buffer between total current assets and total current liabilities. Changing up the current ratio is a big deal for this company. If we were, as a mental exercise, to reduce this row back to what it was a year earlier and then change nothing else, the current ratio of this company would drop from close to 4 to comfortably in the 3.5 range. It would drop by exactly 0.13. Not dramatically different on its own. But now let's consider what type of management would go out of their way to create a whole new type of accounting just to get a 0.13 increase in the current ratio. Well, maybe it's this type of management that would do the same thing for this row here and this row. And then all of a sudden, all of current assets, not to mention we have a brand new row that for the very first time is being included in this year. All of current assets is starting to look like it has a very specific purpose for being tracked. Hey, if you're getting more comfortable uncovering the stories behind the numbers, please like and subscribe. So to figure out if we're being paranoid or not, let's forget about the numerator and look at the denominator, because when there is potential talk about what is the current ratio, we're really talking about what is the relationship between the current assets and the current liabilities. This denominator has increased by 30% over just the last year. Let's see if this sort of stuff might be putting pressure on management to get creative with the numerator of that ratio. Most of the increase is coming from trade accounts payable and accrued liabilities and other payables. Right off the bat, that sounds a lot more serious than gas canisters and whatever else. Let's pop into trade accounts payable, which was the fastest growing row in current liabilities. Well, in the first note that was alluded to on the balance sheet, lots and lots of little tables and little paragraphs, but it actually all boils down to this last sentence. The executive director, who is not specifically named here, has sent an invoice to this company for $1.1 million. The second thing that goes into this balance sheet row is trade accounts payable, which has increased by 2.4 million in the last year. Here they mention that that is non-interest bearing, but very little information, to the point where I'm actually gonna go outside of the annual report temporarily and try to find online if someone has an explanation about what this typically refers to. According to this helpful website, trade accounts payable refers to an amount that suppliers bill a company for delivering goods or providing services in the ordinary course of business. And so simply put, just an invoice sent to them by a supplier. Back to this balance sheet, we notice that they're going out of their way over the last several years in order to add more and more rows to this current assets section. When you actually look into what is inventories, for example, the fastest growing current asset, it's a little weird. It's things that most likely they're not going to be able to sell for future revenue. Arguably a low quality addition to the numerator of the current ratio, which a lot of investors use in order to quickly at a glance check if the company does have more assets in its bank account than what it owes. After seeing a bit of what we didn't love to see in the current assets inventories row, to try to keep an open mind, we've transitioned to looking at the current liabilities, the denominator of that current ratio. The fastest growing current liability we now know is the executive director, who shall not be named, and some unnamed supplier charging this company millions extra in the last year. Not that weird, maybe. If you were looking at just the current ratios, it more or less lines up with some of these not high quality current asset rows. These big expenses not affecting the current ratio because they're balanced out by counting gas canisters as this row here. Back to the income statement, this company is making tens of millions more in revenue, leading to millions and millions of extra operating income. Are they just bored and that's why they're coming up with extra accounting rows in the balance sheet? We're now going to call in the Sage Seeds AI. I'm not quite tapping out, but I would like a little help with this one. It's not a familiar industry for me. It's not a familiar culture, aka Greece, for me. Please help me out in the comments. And while you're doing that, also please like and subscribe. Pause and try to guess whether the Sage Seeds AI is going to say that this company ranks high or low. This channel is all about hearing the story behind the numbers and then building up through practice our intuition of whether these stories are or are not representing hidden value. It is also tremendously helpful to explain your reasoning to someone if you are able. This company ranking 17 out of 508 in value for the 2022 season, scoring in the top 5% of all companies so far. I'm now gonna interpret what's going on behind the scenes. The value picture is hurt. It's frankly hurt by these types of accounting practices no matter where you are in the world. However, the unnamed executive director wants $1 million payday. Risk-wise, the margins are more than making up for these sorts of payments. Sage Seeds AI reminding us that the scale of the payments is more important than whether or not the payments are happening at all. Different cultures might handle different transactional possibilities differently, but the bottom line is a language that translates everywhere, and it has recovered quite helpfully in this case. Thank you for watching until the end. Let me know your reaction, share your wisdom, share this video.